Welcome to the Eudaimonia Podcast Free Talk Series.
Let's start off the podcast with the Roswell incident. So, explain what the Roswell incident is, Seth.
Well, it was back in 1947, right?
I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was 1947. Something crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, and a bunch of the eyewitnesses described seeing all these bodies.
And the eyewitnesses were not, most of them were actually not just, like, the people that came into contact with the spaceship that crashed. They were actually legitimate military members, right?
Oh, yeah, because there was a military base nearby, and so a lot of them were employees there, or military personnel. I think there was some doctors in there too, or at least scientists, and they talked about there was these little metal beams that had these strange symbols on them. There was the actual body of the craft. Someone took a sledgehammer to it, and it just bounced, and it just bounced right off.
So it's like a different metal.
Yeah, whatever metal they use, but it was lightweight. It's just couldn't, if you bent it would just go right back to where it was.
So obviously it seems like it's not a balloon as they insinuated, that the military insinuated it was.
And they did something weird there. It was almost a double cover-up. They claimed it was a weather balloon to the press conference, but then in a photo that was taken where they showed the wreckage that they supposedly recovered, it was actually pieces of something called Project Mogul, which was similar to a weather balloon, but it was a balloon that would go up and test radiation, and it was a secret program, but the equipment itself wasn't really anything significant. It was just it was more they wouldn't have wanted people to know why they were testing it.
And I actually heard a little bit on a documentary about apparently there's two military members specifically. I don't know if you know the names. Okay, there was two of them that specifically came into close contact with this apparent ship, and one of them apparently said to the other, I have to report this, and starts running off towards the vehicle or whatever, and the other one said, don't do it, because it's just not a good idea to report something like this. They have to go through a whole top secret process. Apparently, that's what I understand from that. Do you know anything about that specific thing?
I don't remember anything like that, but as I was saying with the Project Mogul, that they that they switched out the evidence for the photograph, which but a lot of the eyewitnesses said that picture was not what they actually saw at the crash site.
Okay, so let's go over to Brandon here. Do you have anything to say about this? Do you know much about this topic at all?
Everything that I know is just spoken. So,
what do you have to say about this? What sounds kind of
just
sketchy?
Government cover-ups, and they think they're being smart when they can change a few little things, but people who were there and saw what they saw know what they saw, and they know when they see bullshit.
So basically, I want to ask you a question and see if. So my theory is, maybe these guys, because there is in Nevada, I think it is, is Area 51, right?
Yeah.
Is that Nevada? Okay, so there's a lot of philosophy on why they keep it like so secret. And
Yeah.
some of the philosophies are, well, whenever you say that place is secret and that there's a lot going on there, then it actually draws more attention to that place and less attention to the actual secret places.
Yeah.
So, but another thing is, if it was secret and they did have things flying around, there could easily be things flying into New Mexico or places like that where it could be top secret aircraft. So it could actually be the military vehicles, and maybe it wasn't even a flying saucer or something like that.
Well, from what I know is that you have a lot of classified vehicles and aircraft in Area 51, and like if you go back to like the Vietnam War and stuff like that, they had classified aircraft there, and then several years later, once they're decommissioned, they declassify them so that everyone knows what it is. So what I'm assuming is that you see a lot of prototype and testable aircraft that are being used that no one has ever seen before. So I think that might be why people are seeing some weird things. But a weather balloon,
that is pretty crazy. I definitely don't think that it was a weather balloon based on a lot of the evidence.
Description and just the fact that what's a weather balloon doing? Conveniently crashing,
and that it alarmed enough
people to like everyone's like it's not
educated people.
Yeah, it's not like you just have one or two people like, oh yeah, I saw something go across the sky. It's like you have multiple people that like, hey, we can give you a decent description of how it crashed and like whatever, and they know it wasn't a weather balloon.
Yeah, and I mean, whether or not, again, if it's a flying saucer or like a or whatever it could be, it could easily be military airplanes, just very top secret. And it could be like when people say, well, I don't think that, like, it just looked like something like, not from Earth. Well, that's what they do at like these places. They want to build something completely crazy and try to experiment with it.
Well, and even if there actually aren't extraterrestrials running these things, if they are just military projects, extraterrestrials would be a good cover for that. But again, it would
definitely
like that multi-layered cover-up where they say it's this, but it's definitely not. But then they plant that they could have just maybe they were fake alien bodies.
Definitely
covering up
that's
one
very
back
true.
It covers
That's very
their
true.
tracks. So in the long run, say if these.
So that's what you mean by double cover up. Is like they claim it's one thing, and then they claim it's completely something completely different.
They claim it's one thing, but make it an obvious cover up, and then make so people know they're covering up. Then throw some things in there to make people think it's something else that they're covering up. When in reality, it might just be that they don't want people asking questions of why does the government have these things, which, as we discussed in the other podcasts, that they're probably vehicles that don't use fossil fuels. And if all of a sudden people found out that the government has this technology that doesn't, we have machines that could free us from our dependence on fossil fuels, then a lot of people are going to be pretty upset that they've had these the whole time.
Yeah,
really.
And another thing is, we actually discovered that Japan has done some crazy stuff with actually very primitive types of technology. During, I believe, World War II, they sent balloons up, and this is kind of similar to the weather balloon thing. I mean, it's like, obviously, I don't know if it could be a weather balloon or not, but the Japan figured out how the currents go through like the wind pushing these balloons. If they launched balloons up, it would go into the United States, and then they could drop bombs from balloons. And they actually did that during World War II. So it's like somewhat advanced, but very, very primitive. It's like those Asian countries really know how to do some pretty crazy stuff.
So it's a really cheap intercontinental explosive.
Yes, exactly. Like and like the worst part about it is they're not blowing up like military people. They're blowing up civilians, like because.
But I don't think that ever. There's only one confirmed.
I think
Japanese
there's a
bombing
couple
in America. From what I know.
Well, Pearl Harbor. Yeah, I know.
No.
Or where
no,
you?
And there was one. There's a Japanese pilot that was ordered to go into like the mainland. I think it was like either Oregon or Washington, and they just had like a normal like 250 kilogram bomb or something like that. And they're supposed to drop it on some town or city or something. And I think he intentionally dropped it somewhere in the forest so it didn't kill anyone.
Oh,
but,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Well,
it's not well known.
The thing that I heard was a balloon. It was something similar to that. A balloon carried a bomb into like a forest or something, and then it never went off. It just dropped down in there, and for years, like decades, I think it was, it's been sitting in there. And then family actually was out on a picnic, and they go out. And they see this thing, and they kind of poked it, and it blew up, killed all of them.
And I've heard of stuff like that happening in war zones where there's landmines that have been left there
definitely,
for years.
Vietnam. I know. The United Nations is actually trying to get something passed where they can go into Vietnam and they disarm all the mines and stuff because there's still a shit ton from the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So I mean. Because there's still people being killed today because of that. It's crazy. It's been over for almost 50 years.
And some of them, because of how much they've aged, they'll either become inactive or they'll be so easy to set off.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You don't even have to step on it. You might just have to like vibrate the ground near it.
Yeah.
Did you hear about like a lot of how I think it was the Vietnamese army, how they fought? Like they had. So, do you know what I'm talking about, Brandon?
The traps and stuff?
Yes, the traps. Go ahead, explain a little bit about that.
Okay, so the Vietnamese use this tactic called guerrilla warfare, and guerrilla warfare is something that America's not really good at, as we've seen in Vietnam and in Iraq.
We're good at the Revolutionary War.
If there's like two organized armies coming together, America is really good at fighting wars. But if it's like, if we're fighting people that like we can't tell if Joe Schmo over there is a villain, like we can't tell.
Yeah, he's a tourist.
So
he's a Muslim, so he must be a tourist.
So the Vietnamese would have these traps, and some of them would be like, they would take a road or something like that and dig away the earth, and then they'd put these wooden spikes and they put like shit on them to
like poison,
kind of like poison. So whenever you got stabbed, it'd infect you. So you'd have like platoons and shit of soldiers walking over it, and all of a sudden you'd see 5 or 6 guys drop into the pit, and they all be spiked to death. And if the spikes didn't kill them, then the feces would infect their body, and yeah, you know what happens. And then another one is, they had one where it was like a tripwire trap, and if you hit the wire, there's a thing connected to a tree branch and it has spikes connected to the end of it. And it'll come in
man, that'd be terrible.
Those are actually, if it's what I think you're describing, those are surprisingly easy to make.
Oh yeah, I mean, like a lot of the stuff that they did was actually very easy to make. It's just not, they did not expect a lot of this stuff. Like it's just, a lot of them were just getting your ankles caught in things and
really
poisoning
just slow you down.
Like, it's just
anything like that just uses a basic tripwire with a bowed sapling, and then you can rig up whatever you want to that.
I just like how these more I don't want to call them primitive because that sounds kind of like racist almost in a way, but we can beat armies that are organized and powerful, but when it comes to a few scrubs and a few traps, we can't deal with that for some reason.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why we never. That's why we didn't win. That's why we in the war in Iraq we never succeeded. Well, number one, it was a lost cause in the first place. But second off, it's because we don't know who the enemy is.
Yeah.
It could be anyone.
And
then it wasn't really a war that was made to be won from the beginning anyway. They just wanted occupation.
Now, it is true that with the war on Iraq, we didn't lose as near as many people as we did in like World War II or anything like that. But the problem is just because we didn't lose that many people does not make it a good war, because like Brandon said, it's hard to find out who the bad guys are. So if you can't figure out who the bad guys are, we don't even know if we're winning. You know, it's
and eventually you start
killing
killing enough innocent people where the people who would normally be decent people come in. They get pissed off at you and they attack you.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, well, see, this is what we're coming over here to stop. It's like, no, you created this shit. It's our fault. But no, you can't blame America because everything America does is right.
Yeah, and okay, since we're on a little bit of pseudoscience and a lot about warfare and stuff like that, let's go kind of mix it up with a little bit of pseudoscience with it. Now, it could be actual science, but as far as we know, it is pseudoscience because we don't have any evidence for it. But during World War II, Hitler made some crazy stuff apparently, like the bell and
what's that?
Stuff like that. Basically, the bell. It's there's a lot of theories behind it. We don't know what it was exactly.
We know they had it, but it was never found.
Yeah, there's this area where they had these pillars and there was these chains that something was supposed to be attached to it, but it was gone. It was missing, and it went missing. They're thinking around the time that both Hitler and what's Hitler's right hand man's
Goebbels?
name? No, it's we can edit a
Himmler.
lot of this out. Himmler. Yes. Himmler, he committed suicide as well. During that process, that time period, the machine went completely missing, and they did a lot of science experiments, and a lot of it is actually, for instance, the rocket. They figured out how to build the rockets and stuff. And
they were actually
years before anyone else did.
They were the first to actually launch anything into orbit. A lot of people give that credit to the Russians with Sputnik.
They sent the first man out, didn't they?
I think they sent the first woman too.
And a dog.
Yeah.
And but anyway, the missile that the Nazis made, it was really good long range, but it wasn't very good at hitting its target. It just was good at going really far. So they ended up not using it much in actual combat, but they did actually launch one into orbit before anyone else got even close to that. And then after World War II, U.S. and Russia kind of both took all the rocket program. Yeah.
Hey, you got credit for the Germans for something.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back.
Old scars heal over, determination you're sober. It begins where you try to win. You're the one that must break the cycle. It's on you, no one else will. It's a new day rising in you. So get up, throw down your guns and let it come.
Welcome back to the Pseudo podcast. All right, now I'm going to go back to a little bit of something here. So, like I was mentioning, the bell and all of that, there's also something. Have you ever heard of the band Foo Fighters? I'm sure you guys have. All right, do you know that Foo Fighters is an actual thing?
I know. I did know that it was. I can't remember exact, but it was some kind of secret Nazi.
Yes.
Aircraft, right?
Yes, as far as we know, there were some pilots that were flying in Germany during the war. I think it was in Germany, and there was these strange lights that just were coming out and doing some crazy things against our pilots apparently, and that was part of a reason for a majority of our loss of aircrafts, and they called them Foo Fighters. So, do you know much about that?
I I remember seeing something about it a while back, but I can't remember anything
I
specific.
think I might have an educated guess on what that is.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the only Nazi aircraft that I can think of that starts with an F is the Fokker-Wulf, which is this really fast fighter plane that the Nazis used from like early 40s to the end of the war, and they had like two 20mm guns and a few like 7.62 millimeter or something like that, and they were only really used by like veteran pilots. So, and they were pretty. If someone spotted one, you were pretty much dead, because especially if you're in a bomber too, because they can knock that shit down really
definitely.
quick.
Well, I think
that might not be what a Foo Fighter is. I'm just making an educated guess on what that might be.
The Foo Fighters, from what I understand, I don't remember. It's been a while, but from what I understand is they did some crazy anti-gravity stuff, and like. A lot of the things that the Germans were practicing apparently was stuff against or for anti-gravity. And in fact, there was some sightings, apparent UFOs flying over places in California, like L.A. I think it was. Did you hear about that, Seth? Did you?
I'm not sure.
There was like apparently something like some kind of UFO floating over LA, and they thought it was the Germans, I believe it was, and so they started shooting at it
during World War II.
I believe it was during World War II. It could have been. They might have been thinking of the Russians during the Cold War. I don't remember. I want to say it's World War II. So they started shooting at it, and they couldn't get it, so it just flew away.
I think I remember hearing about that now. But
I think it was during the nighttime too.
Yeah,
they completely turned out the electricity in all of LA, and they just started shooting at it, because that's one of the tactics is to shut down all of the power except for the military units, so that they can't see and
where the towns are and stuff.
Exactly. So they just fire at them. So now back to the bell. Do you know some of the theories behind what the bell could be?
I mean, I've heard theories that it could have been some, at least attempted time travel, or attempted wormhole. And
actually, they said that one of the German, I don't know if it was one of the German scientists or one of Hitler's main people, that actually stole the bell and went back in time or something like that. Somebody said something like that could have happened.
Well, wasn't there a bunch of scientists that were also working on that also went missing too?
Oh, there was a lot of people that went missing during World War II, and I think a lot of them were executions and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm
sure a lot of them may have just, went into hiding just to avoid
definitely.
Nuremberg trials.
we did take a lot. Have you heard about that? Like, Brandon, have you heard about how the U.S. took German scientists and used them in our rocket program and actually made NASA?
Yeah, that's true. That's a true statement. And I think one was involved in the Manhattan Project. I don't want to say that for sure, but for some reason that's like coming back from my science or my history class in high school for some reason. But again, I could be totally off.
And I know a lot of them were even given pardons for their war crimes.
Yeah, which is
if they would just help us.
See, I love America, because only in America can you take someone who's done something criminally, and as long as you do something for them for profit, you can get away from your charges.
But if you just might know something about someone who's in Al-Qaeda, then they can take you as an enemy combatant and waterboard you until you give them whatever information you can pull out of your ass.
Or if you sell a little bit of weed, you go to jail for 2 years. I mean,
speaking of weed, let's go ahead and go on to the subject about something like that.
It's a lovely transition.
We talked about war now. Now let's talk a little bit about peace. All right. So, Brandon, what are your beliefs on this subject?
the government has no right to tell you what you can put in your body. Simple as that. I mean, even like the Republicans who are like so against this shit should be the first ones to say that I'm correct on that point, because they're like, oh man, we want limited government. We don't want them intruding. That's me being a Republican right there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like the one point that should just nail it down. But I'll give a supporting point. I think everything you see about alcohol can be directly paralleled with that of marijuana. In fact, alcohol is probably a little bit worse than what it does to you. But if you're going to say we shouldn't legalize weed, you should also say we should go back to prohibition and get rid of alcohol too. Mm-hmm. And one thing we've learned from this is that if there's one thing we've learned from this, we've learned that banning things is not a good idea, because it just creates black markets and people start getting killed, and you start, the exact same thing that you didn't want to happen is happening, just in a different way. And it happens with underground tunnels and sewers and guns and people fighting and stupid shit like that. So I mean,
and
I don't even have to tell you what marijuana does to even like convince you of my point.
Yeah, and I'm actually about to say something about what marijuana does. And there was this one comedian, Seth Rogen, I believe it was. He has a really hilarious philosophy on this, but it's true. It's almost completely true. Okay, we don't agree with ISIS. That is obvious. The wars that we fight out there is almost fruitless, because there's always going to be something similar to Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever. There's always going to be something out there doing some crazy shit. Sorry guys, I made a mistake whenever I said Seth Rogen. I meant Joe Rogan. So anytime I say Seth Rogen, just replace that with Joe Rogan. So Seth Rogen's idea is to take marijuana and somehow make it in some form of bomb, smoke bomb, and just drop it from a plane all over the
That's actually
place.
been done.
What?
It's just not very practical because of how expensive. But
yeah.
They did make a weaponized version of THC, but it was a concentrated dose that they could release a cloud with basically crop dust.
Yeah, I was just about to say a crop duster or something.
And apparently it had very strong effects too. It would be
because that was probably some hardcore stuff, and taking in all of that at once has to mess you up.
Completely disoriented and unable to fight, but they would be okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't really.
Usually, they could just end up taking prisoners from that because they're not fighting back.
Yeah, really. They could even. I guess it doesn't even have to be a plane. Like, you know how the military uses flash bombs, smoke bombs, and stuff like that. Why not make a weed bomb?
Well, it's going to affect the people using them too.
Well, if you have a gas mask on, though, it won't.
Sure. Okay, that's true.
So, you could throw it in there, run in there, and just take them as prisoner instead.
Well, here's the thing. You know what's going to make the enemy do? It's going to be like, hey, let's just chill out. Let's watch some Netflix.
Exactly.
Let's order a pizza and we'll do it tomorrow. Okay.
So when we go in there, when we have a weed bomb, we throw it in there. They're gonna. By the time we get it, when we're going up to the building, they're like, "Oh, there they are! Let's try to kill them!" And we're just stealthily going up to the door and throw the smoke bomb or the weed bomb in there, and then we just sit outside for just a few seconds longer, and go in, and they're watching a documentary on DMT.
Kicking the door. It's like, oh, damn it, do we really have to do this now?
They're listening to Pink
Floyd. It's
Floyd.
going to stimulate the economy because people are going to be spending money on pizza and chips and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
I think Taco Bell needs to sponsor a weed legalization campaign.
That would help. It would help the cause, but it might ruin their reputation as a business. People
At the same time, everyone that goes to Taco Bell after midnight. And if they do that, every stoner everywhere is going to be like, dude, we should go to Taco Bell 10 times more.
So true, I can't argue with that. And the people that don't, since it's not legal, the people that don't smoke it, get drunk instead and go out to Taco Bell, you know? So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
it would be better
they
to
could
have
be
Get
better
drunk
if
and
you-
then drive through the drive-through.
They don't say don't get stoned and drive. It's don't drink and drive.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it doesn't sound as cool. It doesn't roll off the tongue like drinking and driving does.
I would much
Stoning
rather
and swerving.
I'd much rather have somebody stoned drive than to have somebody drunk
Oh,
drive.
my
Any other drugs or anything like that you think should be legal?
Well,
if they should be
well, I
considered
think
drugs,
they
should
at
marijuana
least-
be considered drugs? First off, should I say that?
Should
Should-
marijuana
well,
be?
is that-
Technically, it's a drug. I mean,
is it a drug?
Nicotine's a drug. Caffeine's a drug. It doesn't just because something's a drug doesn't make it bad
Mhm.
or it just
So
it
what
just
is a
manipulates
drug?
the chemicals in your body.
That's
all
what
it
a drug
does.
is. Okay.
That's all it does.
But I think they just need to just redo the whole schedule system because there's a whole bunch of stuff that is Schedule 1 that even, take several different hallucinogens, for example, like LSD, MDMA, DMT, psilocybin. They've all, back when they were first coming out, even doctors that were studying them said, okay, these could be dangerous if used irresponsibly, but we think there's potential for medical use. So
Yeah.
we suggest they recommended putting them in Schedule 3 so that they could do testing on them, but not give.
And marijuana is still a Schedule
and,
1, right?
Yes.
There's-
And
I know a lot of people are
cocaine
trying
is,
to get it.
and cocaine is Schedule 2.
That makes no sense. Well,
Because
I know
it's a-
because cocaine it has something to do with like dopamine or some shit like that.
It
and it's-
inhibits reabsorption of dopamine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that has to do with addiction. I think that's why people get addicted to it is because of that.
Well, it's that the dopamine is one of your reward response
Yeah.
chemicals,
Yeah.
and then when it inhibits reabsorption, you end up kind of crashing later on after your brain uses up all of it, and then you have dopamine deficiency until it can build back up.
Yeah.
And these are chemicals that release no matter what.
Yeah,
like
it's
they,
just like natural processes in your
Yeah.
brain that occur all the time. Like right
Even-
now, it's happening.
even love occurs. Like whenever you
Yeah.
love somebody, it actually sends that.
Yeah.
What is it? Dopamine and what was the other one?
Dopamine, serotonin,
Serotonin.
oxytocin.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, and like a lot of those release even just running or working out and stuff like that. So you can actually feel the same effects almost. It's just the quantities. It's like
Yeah.
what releases it.
I mean, we
more.
know cocaine's, it's addictive and it's probably worse than marijuana in a lot of respects. But I mean, I just think overall that I don't think government should say what you can and cannot put in your body. I know they should just be like they should keep the schedule thing where they say, okay, here's the severity of how bad this drug may be. They can keep that, but it shouldn't be, oh well, this has some medical purposes or this doesn't. It should just be this is how severely or this is the possibility you might get addicted or these are the more addictive higher up you go or whatever. But it shouldn't be illegal in any sense.
Yeah.
But with a lot of those, when a lot of doctors, they recommended putting them Schedule 3 so they could study them for some potential medicinal uses, the DEA just made them all Schedule 1 because at the time, things like LSD and psilocybin were being used by the hippie types that,
Yeah.
because of a certain thing that happens when you're tripping, the blocks in your brain are kind of lifted where, stimuli will go to different parts of the brain than what it normally will. Now, this is, kind of like how they, people talk about using 100% of your brain rather than a small amount.
yeah.
Now, that, there's a reason why we don't do that because when, that, when more of your brain is working at the same time than what it should, that's tripping. So
Yeah, okay.
You
When
don't
you
want to
overstimulate the brain, it can
And-
have some bad side effects.
And something that I do want to say about the whole brain thing is, I'm sure you guys know about it, but like a lot of people have the wrong interpretation on it, like as if it was like that movie
It's-
that what is his
Lucy?
name? Is that the one with
Yeah, the
Morgan
one-
Freeman or
yeah.
whatever? Okay, yeah. So basically, some people get the wrong idea that we only use 10% of our brain all the time in our entire
Yeah.
life, when really you're
That's
using
not
like about, I think 100% of your brain is just 10%. is any given time.
Yeah.
So like you could use
You're
10%
not using it-
at one
you're
time,
not using-
the other 10% at another time.
You're not using 10% of it all the time or 100% of it all the time. There's
Exactly.
different parts that you're
Because-
using.
And if you would be using 100% of your brain to do anything, it would be like trying to have 100 different conversations at one time.
or
And you're-
overclocking, like going way too overboard on your PC. Like it doesn't have, it's getting too much heat and it's just overworking it like a workhorse, and then you just die.
And that's why tripping on hallucinogens, you can't really function much. You can't get a whole lot done, but at the same time, having all that new activity in your brain can gives people almost spiritual like revelations.
Yeah.
Which was why that's why a lot of the because a lot of the hippies that were on LSD started thinking, well, wait, we're all one. Why should we be going to Vietnam and killing
Exactly.
these people that also have families just like us? And the
See,
government doesn't want people thinking like that.
The hippies back then were actually, I mean, even probably today, they're still right about, being against Vietnam. They were just given people have a negative view towards them because the government was like, oh, hey, these people are against what we want to do over there, so we're going to say these people are crazy and they're stupid and
Unpatriotic.
Yeah, all of a sudden, if you're against war, you're somehow like unpatriotic. It's like I'm against war. And I feel like I'm more fucking patriotic than
Yeah,
people
because
who
you're
are
like-
war.
because-
Like that's like we should not be intervention. Like we don't need to be the world police.
Yeah.
Like going over and saying,
Well, we do if we want to hold on to petrochem.
yeah, exactly. It's like I forget what I've been telling this, but you know how ISIS set that guy on fire recently?
Yes.
Okay, so apparently in Saudi Arabia there was a case where they beheaded 21 people. I'm not sure if it was the government or some extremist group, but we're gonna criticize ISIS because they don't have any of our interests with them at all. But what we didn't criticize the Saudis because they have all our fucking oil. So
Yeah, because they beheaded 19 people at one time, and we didn't say anything.
well, in this
about
case it was
that.
21, and we're not we're not.
Was
gonna
it Saudi
Sa-
Arabia that
yeah.
did? Oh wow! So
Well,
they
that's-
did another 21 after the 19.
Well, I'm
I
not
think.
sure. When did you hear 19?
19 was.
'Cause this was
I don't
recently.
remember. It was. It was recently, but I don't think. How long are you talking about the 21?
Well, I first heard someone reference it about a week ago.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was like a month ago or like a year ago or 2 years
Okay.
ago. I don't know, but
The 19 that I'm
If-
talking about would probably be about a half a
okay,
year
maybe
ago. I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm misquoting someone. But it's just like if you have something of America's interest, they are going to not criticize you. So we're not going to criticize the Saudis, even though they killed a ton more people than ISIS has.
That's why I love the narrative that they have to give about spreading democracy and protecting the world's freedom and stuff. When really all it is they'll let dictators do whatever they want as long as they play ball.
Yeah, exactly. And there's clear evidence that we've done that in the past, where we've taken out dictators and replaced them with what the people over there thought was a new democratic like president, who's actually another dictator like appointed, and I don't know what the word is I should use, but they were like supported by the U.S. So these people get put into office and they just do whatever the U.S. wants them to do. So they're just like a little puppet for them.
Well, one of the first things they usually do is they go with the Rothschild-owned Federal Reserve Bank, which something that's really weird to look at is right now the only countries that don't have the Rothschild-owned central bank are Cuba, Iran, and North Korea. Before 9/11, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and Iraq were also all on that list.
How
All of
convenient.
them since then have, for whatever reason, we've gone in, destabilized their government and set up a new democratic
Exactly.
one who signed on right away with the central bank.
And of course they're gonna mask it. They're gonna say that it's pretty blatant and obvious what they're doing, but they're gonna have some cover story that we're doing it for because democracy needs to be spread. And to me, even though I think democracy is a little bit better than communism, it's no better than what the communists were doing back in the 50s.
Yeah.
You don't need to be spreading, just for your interests, you don't need to be spreading your political ideology. And let's get this straight, too, is that America is not a democracy.
Yeah.
We think it is, we're told it is, but it's not.
Yeah, and, like,
And even for a republic, there's still a lot of people that end up in those offices that are totally not even elected. You have all of the president's cabinet
and we get
members.
corporations and donors and
lobbyists.
so much. It's a fucking, it's pathetic. Not to mention that we have a two-party system, which is, whoever came up with that's fucking retarded. I mean, it was good. It might have been good back in 1800, but it's not good when you have all these ideologies.
Well, and we're just so huge too.
Yeah.
We can't. The same system that worked when we were a tenth the size doesn't work with as big as we are now.
Well, and see, the only hope for third parties is that you get maybe some of your issues and stuff put into, like, maybe with the Democrats or Republicans. That's like your only hope. You're never going to get the full platform that the party has.
We should get rid of friggin' parties in general.
Because, all you see, like, I don't care much about Obama either, but at least I'm going to criticize him for legitimate things other than the fact that he's a Democrat.
Okay, speaking about Obama, I saw a post earlier today. And I mean, this goes around a lot. I'm sure you guys. I talked to Seth about it earlier. And this is about gun control. So a lot of misinterpretation that people get is they think, oh, Obama is gonna take away our guns.
Yeah, those people are fucking crazy.
There's this post saying.
Wait, is it someone you know that posted this?
Yes.
Okay.
This is somebody I know. They posted something about. Obama says, I'm sure you guys seen this. Obama said, Obamacare has been, or the Affordable Care Act has been in government for 3 or 4 years now. So quit trying to change that. And then down below it says, the Second Amendment has been around for 222 years. Stop trying to change that. And I'm just like, okay. Let me
bring up something real
you
quick?
on what Obama thinks. Okay, go ahead.
So the Second Amendment was originally put in as a response to the British back when we were trying to form a nation. And so the idea is that since America was kind of like we were just coming out of a confederacy, so we still had a little bit of the Articles of Confederation. Like, we had that kind of like ideology going on. And the idea is that it's kind of like the European Union. Like, every state is kind of like a country within the European Union, except we call them states.
Yeah, exactly. And
the idea is so that every state had its own militia. So you would let civilians have weapons for if the British attacked. So I mean, it's not really saying that every American has a right to own a weapon, which I think they should in many respects, but it's not implicit, it's not implicit like that. It's kind of, and see, whatever you believe, you'll kind of like make the amendment fit to your worldview or whatever like that. But it's not saying that you can just have weapons. It's there for defense from other nations so that the states can form their militias. That was the reason. And today, since we don't have that problem anymore, we use it as kind of as an excuse.
And another thing is, places are considered states completely differently than the United States uses the states. Like, I think Germany is considered a state. It's not really technically a country or
the
something
German
like
state.
that.
Well,
in
France, they call it a
country
country.
Can kind of be synonymous.
They could be, but that's the reason why technically we have a completely different government system where all of our states have its own representative and all of that, and so
and really,
that's what's supposed to be different
like,
completely.
That's almost a fault with America, because America is probably the most diverse country on Earth, which I think is a good thing. But a lot of people don't make it a good thing because there's so much racism.
And it's because you start getting laws and certain things like anti-evolution and all that.
In certain areas. And it just makes everything so difficult. And it's not an anti-immigration or I'm anti-Mexican or anti-Cuban or whatever. It's just, politics in America is especially hard because it's not like you just have German and French people. It's like you got English, German, French, Hispanic, Latino.
because everybody wants to come here, and that's not a bad
That's
thing.
not a bad thing, no.
Everybody wants to come here and be free. That's the point, and that's the point of America. And a lot of conservatives don't think about that, because the point is to be free.
Yeah.
These Mexicans that may be illegal, I mean, they're not all terrible people. They're getting out of the country because of the terrible government system in Mexico.
And one of the big arguments from a lot of uneducated people is we were here first, so that makes us, the benefactor.
Then Native Americans should be
And
way
I
more
even
qualified.
wrote a paper, and my professor agreed with me on that point that I made, that the freaking Native Americans were here first, and the Europeans came and took their land from them.
Yeah,
So
and the
there's
Mexicans were too. The Mexicans were here
If
before
there's
us.
anything I would do if I was president, like the first thing, since it'd be the easiest, I would make like a whole month like dedicated to Native Americans, because they've been even more than the blacks, they've been fucked over.
Definitely. I mean,
like slavery was kind of, it wasn't out there and blatant like it was with the Native Americans, because it kind of helped on a household
They
basis.
tried to enslave Native Americans, but they were a lot better at just running off into
Yeah.
the woods and not getting found.
Native Americans was this whole, like, we started a whole fucking war with them and shit.
Yeah.
So, and Andrew Jackson, one of our presidents, was
Completely insane.
And it was
Yeah.
an unnecessary war. Like,
Yeah.
that was probably, out of all of the United States history, that was probably the most unnecessary war we ever had.
If anything, I think that North America should just be a purely Native American and Mexican country, but I mean, Europeans, seeing as there's a lot of potential for this, since there's a lot of resources here, it's like, for any political reason, you're going to want to come over here and take in everything that this country has.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of not ours. I'll willingly admit that 200 some years after the fact, but I mean, doesn't make it not true.
And so, I mean, like, yeah.
And I'm not saying we're all evil, but I just,
Yeah, because I mean, like, okay,
if that's your argument, is that we're here first,
yeah,
it's completely invalid because we weren't here first.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're gonna go by that logic, then we should just all be in Africa still.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and there in the 1800s, there were a lot of freaking immigrants from all over the place, Asia and all that. They're everywhere, coming from everywhere. So, just to say, "Oh, I'm white, so that means I'm American."
Yeah,
That's bullcrap, because there was Asians here with the the Europeans.
America is
Just doesn't
a
make any
melting
sense.
pot of a country. It's not.
And that's what's supposed to be so good about it, is because we're so
exactly.
diverse.
But no, we think that white Anglo-Saxon men are the like norm. Nothing's the norm in America. Everything is equal, you know.
All right, so we'll take another quick break there, and we'll be right back. You are listening to Eudaimonia Podcast. If you like the songs in the background, please check out Autumn Burning on Facebook, Spotify, or you can go to iTunes and find it on.
If it's all lively, you can paint the skies with all those tears you cry. You let it rain down on me. It seems we've been this way for far too long. Every night I'm screaming at you.
Welcome back to Eudaimonia Podcast. All right, so Brandon, you discussed with me something before we started the podcast again, that something about maximum wage. So tell me a little bit about this maximum wage.
Okay, so if anyone knows me, they know that I'm a pretty big liberal, but this is probably the farthest left on the political scale I'll ever go in my life, because even I think it's almost unconstitutional. But the idea is that Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota and former pro wrestler and Navy SEAL, he suggested that there should be a maximum wage imposed on, especially people like CEOs, because they're making so much money.
Okay, yeah. And, like, I'm a little bit two-sided about this, and I understand how you could be, and so, like, I mean, there a lot of rich people, like, there is actually some guy around town here, specifically here, who he makes money on condos. Like, he makes a lot of money on condos, but he takes all of that money, apparently, I don't know if this is true, he could be bullshitting us. He takes all of that money and sends it to charity. So, like, not all rich people are bad, but, like,
the idea here is that if you're making Jesse Ventura's proposal was that if you're making over $3 million a month,
which is way too much money.
Yeah, that's the max that you can earn. He was proposing.
Okay, so basically, I got another idea that could go along with maximum wage. If you do make any more, all of that could either go to like taxes or like homeless shelters or something like that.
That brings up another problem.
Or even require it to go to bonuses for the employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Okay, the problem with that is...
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Here's where you're going to piss off rich people. And I know to people like us, it's a non-issue. They're going to say, well, we worked hard and we earned that money, and that's our money.
Do you really work hard enough to own 5 Ferraris?
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, the big question is, does anyone really need that money? The idea is that so that everyone in America can live a decent life and not have to worry where their next meal is going to come from. And when you have 1% of the population controlling 40% of the wealth of the entire world, the entire freaking world, that's not good for, number one, the economy, and it's not good for the people.
So that's why it should go to taxes, because if you put it towards taxes,
less taxes on the poor people, and I think if you're making under so much money a year, you should not have to pay taxes at all. Now, Republicans will say, oh, well, that's just encouraging people not to work more. Well, why would it encourage people to work more? Because they're already struggling enough as it is. We're just saying you don't have to pay taxes on top of that, so you don't have to suffer anymore.
What if, now I know a lot of businesses and companies like this hire auditors to audit their money. Why not have now this does sound very communist, but now that I'm thinking about it and it's about to come out, maybe have the government have some kind of auditor that runs your all of your taxes and all of that for you.
Well, you can always pay your auditor to manipulate the money.
After you make so much, you can take the auditor will be able to say, well, this money should go to your employees and pay them more. And then this should go to the taxes.
That should be instituted in work ethics and stuff like that.
Now, small businesses shouldn't have those kinds of auditors.
Well, small businesses aren't going to be making $3 million.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. After you make so much, you should be required to have a government auditor audit you.
Go ahead.
The only real problem I see with this is the fact that the people that are making that much money, they end up spending. They're going to spend that money on, a lot of it may be stuff that, they don't need.
But they still have so much money after that, though.
But someone else will actually be the person that they're buying that from, and they're contributing to other people's, they're contributing to the economy by buying other people's goods and services, no matter how frivolous they may be.
So wait, can you repeat the beginning of that again? Like, who would be doing this?
Okay, the people that are making $3 million a month or more.
Okay, yeah.
When they have that money, they're using it to spend. They're spending it on frivolous rich people things. That, maybe no one needs a gold yacht, but there's someone who makes gold yachts, and they'll be still stimulating the economy by buying that stuff that no one needs.
But the whole idea is to benefit the less wealthy. Yeah, because the 1% is so wealthy.
The thing is, have the other side of that too, to where if you're giving more money to the lower class, then they're going to be spending more, which will be feeding the rich people's businesses again.
But see, okay, if they're making that much money, they should be able to save up enough to buy a golden yacht. No time. $3 million is a lot of money.
There just comes a point where you just don't need any more money.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't institute this, even if I was president. I wouldn't try and get Congress to pass a bill that says, hey, let's impose a maximum. It's just purely there to hey, we're always talking about the minimum wage. Why don't we talk about maximum wage for a second?
Yeah.
Which I think the minimum wage still needs to be raised, not to the $15 per hour. That's freaking crazy. People who are proposing that are freaking crazy. But it just needs to go up more steadily with inflation.
Exactly.
Because if you increase people who are making minimum wage right now, that the money that you're making a minimum wage isn't really enough to make even a decent life in many respects.
I mean, even if you're working like 60 hours a week.
Yeah, exactly. It's and you know, you realize, well, those jobs are made for people in their teens who are just learning to work. But no, if you know in any capitalistic economy, you always are going to have people that are going to do the lower end work because it's just always going to be there.
Okay, and another thing is, I've heard things about 30-hour work weeks, and I think that should totally be a thing. Is 30-hour work weeks?
You'll get people to work harder.
Yeah, and it gives them more life. You know, they actually have time to go home and do stuff.
Well, get this. Okay, so the past few years, Japan's economy has been kind of up and down and stuff, but they've finally found that workers in Japan, like, they aren't satisfied, and they're just like, they're really tired and they're being overworked. So what they just instituted is that you have to have a week. Employers have to give you 5 free days where you don't, just like vacation days. So, you know, even if you don't use those, it's like at least it's there for you, so that if you're, you know, feeling, I just don't feel like going today, it's like you can take a day off or a day or two or whatever. But in America, there's no such thing as mandatory vacation time. A business doesn't have to give you vacation time.
Only if you're unionized.
Yeah,
wow,
exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I never thought about that, because usually every business that I worked for so far has given me...
In which most businesses and companies give you vacation time, but it's just not mandatory under the government.
Yeah, which that should be almost mandatory, because, I mean, a happier person creates happier work, and it does better business. And, you know, with 30-hour work weeks, that means that people will be working less often, and that gives more of an opportunity for more people to get a job. So it just makes sense. It just makes sense to have 30 hours, if you ask me.
Or what if they changed to...
And raised the minimum wage, too.
What if they changed the, you know, for places that run 24 hours, like factories, like where I work, they have 3 8-hour shifts. What if they changed it to 4 6-hour shifts?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very...
Actually, that would end up as 30-hour weeks if you work 5 6 hours.
Then you run into the problem of not getting paid enough.
Yeah, which is why you need to raise the minimum wage, though.
But see, I don't think the problem is as simple as that, where you can just say, "Oh, let's raise the minimum wage and give people less work," because I'm no economist, so I'm just for every upside there's a downside. You got to do that. But
well,
in principle, it sounds like a good idea. I just don't know if it's practical.
I think that if you raise the minimum wage to enough to where it keeps the economy steady, I mean, that means that it gives more people work. So then there's more people putting money into the economy and whatnot like that. So it's like you're putting more money into the economy almost if you're doing that. And like it's not like technically when you raise the minimum wage, you're not necessarily paying the person more. You're paying them about the same amount, just a little bit different. And there's probably it's just I mean again, I'm not an economist or whatever. Economist. No, I'm sorry. I'm not an economist, so I don't know too much about that. But then again, anybody could be an economist because okay, I said this earlier today. Everything that you know came from a human at some point of time. So everybody's always learning, and everything you know is just human thought and knowledge. And so whatever you're doing, like, everything you learn is something that somebody told you and came up with an idea. So, like, there could be a lot of things that you know is wrong. And it's just like Weird Al says, everything you know is wrong.
Actually, you should totally read the D textbook from Cracked. That's pretty much the entire premise. It's like most of what you were taught in elementary school is bullshit.
And see, this train of thought goes back to a famous philosopher. His name's Rene Descartes, I think, and his idea, his philosophy, his idea is that you throw out everything you thought you knew about the world and start from scratch, and you figure out knowledge and everything from there. You don't start with any presupposition. The supposition is that everything is everything goes,
it's
and
like,
you figure it out from there.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people, and this creates problems for people. And this is why I really love Stephen Hawking and how I respect him. Now, I don't agree with everything he says. He probably is the smartest person on Earth, but
Well, he has nothing to do but think.
yeah, I know, yeah, anymore. Now it's just like he sits there and thinks all day, and that's all he can do.
Can you imagine living in his world there, where that's he has that mind, but he can't.
And he technically has all been about.
basically-
Have any of you guys watched any of the Stephen Hawking movies? Like,
Yeah, I have.
They're
I've
really
seen, well, they're
good
documentaries,
movies,
but there's a
seen-
movie coming out, I think, that's
and
about
it's
it.
actually already out. Theory About Everything. That one isn't near as good as the TV series. I think because when I went into the theaters and I saw Theory of Everything, I expected it to be more intellectual. But
Oh,
it was the opposite. Like, it was more about his life in general. Like, they
I would
skimped
be
on...
kind of disappointed seeing that movie and not having that
Yeah,
intellectual.
They skimped a lot on what he did. There was
Huh.
a TV series. I don't remember the name of I think it was just Stephen Hawking, and it was really good. I think it was the guy that played Sherlock Holmes.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, that guy. The guy that also did the
Smaug?
Enigma movie. He did this really good Stephen Hawking movie on TV, and I recommend that to anybody, because that one, it shows a lot about what he went through in college, and like some of the theories that he did, and it just gives you that chilling thought of, this is what this guy did. And the other one, The Theory of Everything, there was a lot more money put into
It
that.
sounds like
Yeah.
it's intended for a layman's crowd.
Yeah, it was. I think so.
And that's one
but
of the
the
things that
worst
kind of
part
pisses
about
me
it-
off about that movie.
The worst part about it is there wasn't even too much of a love thing there. Like, you expect to watch it and get
see
something.
what Hollywood's going to do is they're going to take something that's irrelevant and it was very minor in someone's life, and they're saying, how can we exactly? Like, I'll go back to American Sniper. I don't know if you guys haven't seen it, right?
No,
Okay, there's
not
a
yet.
part. Well, the whole movie, he's like going up against this guy known as. I can't remember what his name is, but he's like one of the most elite snipers that the Iraqis have or whatever, and he's like constantly he's constantly sniping Chris Kyle and his men and stuff like that. So he's like, that's like the protagonist or the antagonist or whatever in the movie.
I know. Yeah.
And Chris Kyle ends up killing him, which didn't happen, and for all we know, it didn't happen in real life.
Did he
But-
even exist?
Well, in Chris Kyle's book, he mentioned him in one paragraph. And
Oh, wow,
so,
okay.
but they made like half the movie.
Probably
on
because
him.
he only saw him one time in real life. He probably only saw
But
him
it just
once.
goes to show you how they're going to romanticize a minor event and turn it out to be something so much more. And then you're going to have Americans believe, oh, look at Chris Kyle and how he did battle with that sniper and he went up there knowing that he might get shot. And,
in other words, he was way more honest about himself than
well, and
Hollywood was.
we know Chris Kyle lied about a lot of shit. But
Yeah. But he was
also
a lot more honest than them, apparently.
Clint Eastwood made up even more shit. But
So, okay, anyways, back to the Stephen Hawking thing. I really respect him because he did not care. This guy that I don't remember the guy's name. He was basically the mentor of the school, and he would always go on the radio and say, "This is how this is, and this is how that is." And Stephen Hawking's like, "He's wrong about this." And he's like, everybody's like, don't say that. Don't say that. He knows a lot more than you do. and it's Stephen Hawking that we're talking about. It's like, you just said that to Stephen Hawking, the guy that's going to prove that guy wrong. It's like, and so whenever you think about it, anybody could be really, really, really intellectual. It's just...
you just need drugs to like bring that out.
yeah. And that's probably why Stephen Hawking is so intelligent.
He's just sitting there like, oh, dude, quantum mechanics so easy.
I think
So
this
easy because
podcast
of
just
his
made
Ella.
full circle. Back on drugs.
We had to go into pseudoscience there somewhere. But it's like I have ALS, so I get these drugs, and now I'm genius. But he was genius before he got the drugs. So.
And
But it's
just
more
think
of
how
a reason.
smart he would sound if he could actually talk.
Oh my! Oh,
Like
he
I
was,
would pay money.
and he's
I'd pay good money to go
English.
see. Yeah.
He's English, so he would actually sound very intelligent.
Yeah.
That
Well, all
was
British people sound intelligent unless you're from
There was-
Liverpool.
There was something on the theory.
Unless they talk.
There was something on the Stephen Hawking theory of everything. They actually had this one point where it said they're sitting there and they got his first computer hooked up and everything, and he's just then finally they're like, okay, say something, Stephen, and then he says something, I don't remember what it was, and then his wife was like,
Sorry.
it's American. It's an American accent. And then they're like, well, I'm sorry, is that a bad thing? And then they're like, guess we'll just have to do.
The fuck's wrong with an American accent?
They sound like this.
See, I think as soon as you start that accent,
Stephen
you
Hawking says,
immediately lose credibility.
America.
I think as soon as you start talking like a Louisianian, if that's how you pronounce it, you just
Louisianian.
They're aliens.
You immediately lose credibility just because I think it's just
any American accent. Once you get
it's just a dialect thing. Like people respect certain dialects more than others. It's just
I
a
mean,
natural
if I
thing.
talk like this, then it's gonna make my whole podcast sound a lot smarter.
Yeah.
So if I start talking like this the entire
If you grab
time,
a
you're gonna
Bible,
think I'm
start
the smartest
thumping on
one
it while
here.
you speak, you just lose credibility right there.
You have absolutely got to be the most illogical person in this room.
Dimwitted prick.
Bollocks. Neil deGrasse Tyson said that's his favorite word that he wishes was in America is bollocks.
It means balls, right?
Yes, balls.
You know, like the punctuation, the colon, they used to have a little dash next to it too.
Mhm. Wait,
so,
the
and-
bollocks? For bollocks? What are you talking about?
Okay, no.
I'm sorry.
The punctuation, the colon.
Uh-huh.
You know. It's
Oh,
two
you're actually
dots.
talking about the
Yes.
actual thing. Okay.
Okay, now now it's just two dots, but there used to be two dots, and right after it was a dash, like right at the mid
Okay, I
height
think I remember
between,
that.
Mhm.
and they call it the dog's bullocks. And there are several of them on the American Constitution. So there's like doodles of dog dicks.
Creative, Stephen Hawking did that all the time. I mean,
and question marks and exclamation points were from cat tails and anuses.
wow.
Because they have the line and then
How could you take scientists and stuff seriously when they're drawing that kind of stuff?
Kind
what's our next?
Kind
Go
of makes
ahead.
you wonder what a lot of our stuff came from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, if you do watch the Stephen Hawking stuff, you should. I mean, he actually has a really good sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
And if he was on, I think it was Stephen Colbert or something, and he was saying, so is there a parallel universe where I'm smarter than you? And then Stephen Hawking
remember
was
that.
like, he said. Yes, and there would also be a parallel universe where you're actually funny. Oh, I love that. That was like the funniest thing Stephen Hawking has probably ever said. And he loves
And he's
puns.
like laughing too.
Yeah.
Whenever he's
ha,
like,
ha. But like Stephen Hawking actually has if you go on YouTube, you can actually find Stephen Hawking jokes, and there's like these 10 to 20 second clips of like these very terrible puns that Stephen Hawking does. They're just terrible.
it's like ha ha ha. That was punny.
And now your back's against the wall. You're the one that must break.
Thank you for listening to Eudaimonia Podcast. Watch for our next episode. Goodbye.